What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome into the Seattle Mariners post-game recap. I do have a couple very special guests with me. I have got Sean Collins and Steven Collins from the Collins It Like It Is podcast. They'll be joining me to break down this game, break down the series for the Mariners, and we'll talk about some of the Ty France news and our thoughts on the team overall. I'll get to them in just a second, let them introduce themselves here. But the Mariners do get a huge win today, 6-4. They defeat the Houston Astros. They salvage the final game in the series. They do pull back even in the West. Percentage points are technically behind, but certainly a nice difference, certainly much better being even than 2 games back. And now the Mariners do get a little bit easier part of the schedule with the Angels and White Sox. Will face some tough pitchers. Before I go any further into it, do me a favor, smash the like button, hit subscribe if you're new or just lurking, and comment your thoughts on today's Mariners W down below. Just feels good to finally win one here. But before we get into that, welcome in Sean and Steven. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Sean, tell me a little about where people can find you, what you guys do.
Yeah. So we're a couple brothers, if you can't tell by the Collins last name. We have a Seattle sports podcast that we do together about twice a week. We break down, Mariner series. We don't do a daily podcast, but we break down Mariner series and talk about the teams that we love, both Seahawks and Mariners. We've been talking about these teams since we were little boys, and we thought, you know what? Let's just fire up a podcast. We've been talking, in text threads. It'd be a little bit more efficient if we just focused it in, so kind of our vibe, similar to you, just think, guys around a table having a brewski, at the bar. Like that's our vibe too. We do not take ourselves very seriously. We are always teasing each other in the podcast, giving each other a hard time, keeping it light. But at the end of the day, we do want to be respectful. And, I should say, in the comment section of a lot of these, posts and forums, things like that, it can get pretty dark. And we really want to push back on that and have opinionated, feelings and have, strong opinions about things, but we also want to be respectful and do it in a way that's, positive. So that's kind of our vibe.
Oh yeah. I love it. And you guys have had me on a couple times. We did a prospect ranking breakdown. I think we actually did a series recap for an Astros series earlier in the year. So I guess we seem to be hooking up around Astros time. But really great points. And I think that's one thing with the Mariners community that's been really cool with some of these connections. You guys had Ty Dan Gonzalez on your show last week on your podcast. I mean, I cannot thank Ty enough for all his generosity. He's helped out my channel. And I know you guys were saying that's where you found me. So it's kind of this great connection and now look, we're teaming up and doing things together. So all those little things and being a part of this community has been, so cool. And to have the connection, like you said, I think there can be disagreements. I think we shouldn't all agree on everything, but we can be civil with it. And we're just having a discussion about it. That doesn't mean that one's wrong, one's right. And I'm the same way. I'm just a fan like you guys, and I'm wrong a lot. I'm okay. I'm willing to admit that. And I want the Mariners to win. Steven, where can the folks find your podcast at?
Yeah, you can find us on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Collins Like It Is. You can find us there, and we're a new podcast. We just started this in spring training, and so we've been joking around that if you want something really professional, if you want something that's absolutely dialed in, if you want some pros that have been doing this for a long time, look somewhere else. So we're still figuring this out. We've been joking around when we had Brent Stecker on and stuff, and Ty. We said, hey, welcome to the minor leagues. Welcome to the parking lot of the minor league stadium. And that's us out there selling hot dogs, Yeah.
We're on we're on Spotify and Apple. Those are the 2 platforms we're on. So if you search Collins It Like It Is on those 2 places, you'll find us. So
yeah, absolutely.
And I'll have the links down below. So anybody that wants to go follow Sean, Steven, please do. And honestly, I know we're joking around about the parking lot bare bones podcast. Those are some of the best, because those are people that know their team inside and out. I don't think I haven't turned on MLB Network or ESPN once this year, because you get very vague, very quick interpretations of the team. You follow podcasts like, Locked On Mariners and my buddy Jake from Raise the Trident, when Mariner Sir comes on here, Collins It Like It Is podcast. You get people that watch this team. I can't speak for you guys, but you've probably watched at least some of every game this year, or at least followed it on your phone. So you were getting people that know this team
We're
as
sickos.
good as anybody. Right? Yeah, no, yeah. We're all a little
Psychos.
deranged for doing that.
We're into, we like pain.
Yeah.
Mariners fans, it's like, man, if we were a Phillies fan right now, or we were a Dodgers fan over the last 5 years, or we an Astros fan over the last 7 years, be like, yeah, that makes sense. We're all Seahawks fans too. It's been a good decade. Mariners fans, what are we, twisted? What are we doing? It's crazy, but
No,
we love this team. We love them.
And see, that's how you know we're dedicated. Nobody here is jumping on a bandwagon. I mean, the last few years have been better than previous years, but you're getting people that are dedicated to this team coming on these podcasts. So really appreciate you guys both joining me today. Thank you.
Oh, dude, thanks for having us, man.
That's gonna be fun.
Anytime. So let's jump into the game today. Sean, I'll start with you. Thoughts on the Mariners' victory today? Salvaged the final game of the series. Technically back tying division. How you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, as far as today individually, I mean, I thought the game went really well. It was a complete kind of 180 from what the first two games were like. Saw a couple hits with runners in scoring position. That's been our Achilles heel for basically the whole year. Saw putting the ball in play a little bit. I thought it was a big improvement in game 3. Brian Wu, I thought it was ironic that we actually won the one game where there was all this scrutiny, oh, you can't start, you got to have Logan Gilbert pitching in the first 3 games. And I'll be the first to admit, I thought, what are we doing? Every other team had their ace going in game 1, 2, or 3. Why aren't we? And it's funny that we actually won the game that Brian Wu, actually was pitching. But I thought he pitched well. That fastball is so deceptive. Basically coming out of his armpit is what it looks like for the hitter. But as far as the game, game 3, I thought it went well. Robles, he's continuing to show that he needs playing time. He's really been a spark for this club. He's probably our best player right now, as depressing as that is to say. But Santos pitching an inning and a third, I thought was encouraging. Starting to see him get ramped up a bit is great to see. And then Munoz, man, he's just been phenomenal all year. So I thought there was a lot of encouraging things about game 3.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'm glad you brought up that Wu Gilbert thing. And Steven, I'll throw it over to you. I was with Sean on that. I was kind of like, why are we not throwing Logan in this series? I with the injury stuff and everything, and Logan lead the league in innings pitched, I can understand a little bit of it. But now, a good thing about this is you get the W day with Brian Wu, and certainly the Angels aren't a great team, but they were a thorn in our side last week. Now you get Bryce Miller, Logan, and Castillo. So you have a little bit better matchups now for the Angels series. What's your thoughts on that?
Man, I'll just take a step back. How do I process even this game in the series is, I mean, we were joking before we hit record that, like, how many times are we going to go down this road? Like, how many times am I going to think this team is dead, they're done, and then you just string me along? Like, it's just a dysfunctional relationship here with the Mariners. That, can you imagine how dark the fan base would have been and how absolutely unhinged the fan base would have been if they would have lost today? I mean, it would have been insane. It would have just been insanity. And I'm glad they got the win. Of course, I'm glad they got the win. But at some point, I feel like I'm watching the same car wreck over and over and over again. And I'm being told that, like, somehow I'm, as the viewer, the problem. And it's like, what is going on? Like, how many times are we going to go down this road? I mean, mentally where I'm at is I can't ignore, there's a stat that I saw on X, actually, that our dad. So we do the podcast with us, both the brothers, but then our dad hops on. We're doing like the Dan Lebitard situation there. He hops on. His name's Larry, and he shared the stat from Perlius that's just blew my mind. So he says since 1969, the fastest a team had ever lost a 10-game lead in the division was 33 games, and that was done twice, both by the Angels in 1995. As a Mariners fan, you know what happened in 1995. So 33 games, 10-game lead, fastest has ever been blown. Mariners lost a 10-game lead in 24 games. That is insanity. And I'm just sitting here as a fan just saying, one game against the Astros, obviously does not change all that, right? Like, one good game where you didn't strike out 75 times and you're not only being able to manufacture runs by solo home runs. It's like, it doesn't change all that. But today was encouraging. But I don't think anything today is allowed to overshadow the Julio news. I thought we were about to see broken ankle and season's over. Like, I mean, just, we all did the collective gasp, and we all went back to 95, quoting the 95 stat there. We all had shades of Griffey breaking his wrist, against the Kingdom fence there. And so just that to me, it was the proverbial gasp that all of Seattle and the Pacific Northwest made this afternoon. I'm glad he's okay and probably avoided major surgery and injury. But that to me was the biggest storyline coming out of today. And how I'm feeling is, I don't know, we were a couple millimeters maybe away from a career. If he loses his speed, my goodness, I mean, what player is Julio? So that's where my head's at, is a mix of Julio injury, the historic collapse, and just disappointment with where the Mariners are at overall. Same old, same old.
Yep. Yeah, and I think with that Julio injury, I'm with you. It's, you're seeing it happen. You're going, and listen, Julio's not had his best season by any means, but you lose Julio, and he's been hot. He's swinging the bat much better here the last couple of weeks. There's not much you can do at that point, because one of the keys that I know we've talked about, I've talked about on my show, if this team is going to win this division, or they're going to make a playoff run, Julio has got to be a key part of that. And if you lose Julio, I don't see any way. I don't know how it works out. I don't know how you do it outside of going and trading for 5 guys to take over in this lineup. There's really no way to do it. So yeah, that collective sigh of just, even when you win, nothing can go right. Good news is x-rays sound like they were negative, MRI tomorrow. So it sounds like they've avoided anything major. I'm assuming he'll probably be out of the lineup tomorrow just for precautionary reasons. But definitely, avoiding major disaster. Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm searching for in my head there. Major disaster avoided there. And for the most part, hopefully we'll wait for the MRI results. But yeah, I think, and Sean, I'll shoot it back to you here. I echo kind of what Steven said. It doesn't, win today doesn't undo the series. It was a disappointing series for the Mariners, followed up by a disappointing series against the Angels before then. And it is another series loss. I certainly, if I'm going to win one game, I'd like to win the last one. Makes the vibes a little bit better, at least leaving a series. But kind of what's your takeaway, Sean, as a whole from the series? We talked about the game a little bit, but, overall, what was your thoughts on these 3 games versus Houston?
Yeah, I think for me, as far as the games go, it's a series. Like, I'm not going to get, too high or too low based on one series. But what really bothered me was the language used around this series, specifically by Scott Service. It really bothered me. Throughout this whole collapse, Scott Service has used language very consistently of, saying, oh, it happens. Or, you don't want to get too high, get too low. And it's like, this doesn't just happen. You losing a 10-game lead to a 1-game deficit, because at the beginning of the day, that's what it was. That doesn't just happen, and that shouldn't be taken casually. You saw Ty France today get, put on irrevocable waivers. So they are making adjustments, but there's just been this language used of like, it just happens. And he compared our collapse to the Astros beginning of the year. And it's like, and almost justifying it. He did that in the pregame of game 2. And it's like, because the Astros had their collapse, that doesn't mean that it's okay for us to have our collapse. This is unique. This isn't okay. And there's almost this language that's thrown around that makes me feel like a fan of like, oh yeah, this does happen. But then it's like, you take a step back. It's like, no, this is very unique and this isn't okay. And that's, for me, as far as like just this individual series, that's what irks me the most, is just this kind of gaslighting. And it bothers me. So I know that doesn't answer your question great, but that's just kind of where my head goes.
Oh yeah,
no, for sure. And to Steven's point, the quickest collapse of a 10-game lead ever. You could give the White Sox a 10-game lead and I would expect them to hold it longer than 22 days, truthfully. Yeah. So no, I get it. Listen, I've defended Scott on here a lot. My patience is starting to wear out a little bit here as we get further into this. If this was September 19th and the Astros cut the 10-game lead to 5, I think that comment would make sense. You go, well, listen, Houston's good. They've cut into it a little bit. We're still right where we want to be. We've got a handful of game cushion here and about 15, 20 games to go. We feel good where we're at. I would understand it more there. It's tough when you've just literally blown a 10-game lead and now you're a game back and kind of going, well, this happens, when it's like, not really.
It's not really.
It should. It's historic. When you're setting historic collapse, this doesn't just happen. And also, there has to be a standard. Well, we're all in jobs. We all have a standard of excellence. Like you can't have this level of ineptitude. I mean, and to put some stats to this stuff, I mean, the reality is we're the lowest batting average in baseball. We have the most strikeouts in baseball, and we're probably going to set the literal baseball's been played for a minute. You know, if you're setting literally Major League Baseball records, they've been doing this thing since like the Civil War. So like if you do the most of anything, it's noteworthy. We're going to set probably the most strikeouts ever in a season. We have the fewest doubles. We have the fewest hits. We're bottom 5 in OPS, on-base percentage, slugging, runs, and RBIs. We cannot hit the baseball. And we're top 5 in virtually every pitching statistic. And so the reality of like, what I want to see, I want to see Scott pissed off. I want to see him fired up. I want to see him care. And I'm not calling for anybody's job today, but the reality of like, you have to hold people accountable. I don't want to see him just, oh, it's just going to be okay. We just got to have faith. Oh, we just got to ride the storm out. It's like, I want to see you ticked off, man. I want to hold you people accountable. I want to hear things like, hey, whoever has the hot hand is playing, because what we're doing is not working. We cannot tolerate this level of ineptitude. I mean, the reality is, if this was the Yankees, if this was the Dodgers, if this was any big name franchise, and they gave up a 10-game lead in 3 weeks, basically, their heads are going to be rolling. There's going to be major subtractions, major additions, major edits. And I'm not saying we're any of those franchises, but there has to be, we can't just be happy to be here. Like, we don't get participation trophies. Like, have some level of respect as a fan base and show us the respect as a manager that, like, hey, we're not tolerating this. And it was his posture. It's not even so much the words he said, but just he was laughing about it. And that really bothers me as a fan. That, like, when I feel like I care more than you do.
Yeah, it was nervous laughter, though. It was, him trying to make light of a dark situation, because he's getting asked questions. He's got to feel the weight of that. I mean, he's made one playoff appearance in 9 years. You think he doesn't feel the weight of that? You think his butt isn't on fire there? He feels it. He's trying to make light of that. And I want to give him a little bit of grace there, because we're talking about the same video. It was a video that Marine Layer posted, and he's laughing a little bit, trying to make light of the question he was asked of, hey, you lost a 10-game series in 24 days. He was asked to comment on that, and the posture of it was pretty rough. And I'll piggyback a little bit on what you're saying, Steven. Like, at the end of the day, Major League Baseball is an entertainment product. They are there to entertain, and it's not entertaining.
It's a rough watch.
No, and I'll draw a little analogy here. My wife and I, we went to a Nate Bargatze comedy show at the SAP Center in San Jose, and they were having all sorts of technical issues. It was an objective disaster. And, we walked away from that going like, oh man, they had a rough day. But there's the reality of, if that's their product, like if that's what they roll out every single day, no one is going to be okay with that. You can have a bad day. You can have a bad week. You can't have a bad month and it be like, well, we're just in one of those stretches. This is a 30-game free fall, and it's been a 100-game disaster offensively. This isn't just a little blip on the radar. So I just want that to be the language. Let's just call a spade a spade. Let's just talk directly. Let's just be real, because this is fake and it's gaslighting.
And to take the analogy even further, Sean, like, imagine if Bargatze, he had consistent tech issues on every tour he's ever been on, and then the same ones keep popping up. Like, it's not like our pitching was a disaster the last few years and our offense has been carrying us to glory. It's like we've had this. We all watched an 18-inning playoff game versus Houston Astros where we couldn't score a run. Like, this shouldn't be shocking anyone. So it is, at some point, it's the same old stuff, like, happening over and over again, and it's maddening.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can't, like, the Astros getting hot, that's fine. Like, if Scott wants to go up there like, hey, we can't control what the Astros are doing, and that's fine. I've said that several times. Like, I've even made points where I'm like, I'm not even really concerned about Houston. That's not that I'm not concerned about Houston. I'm very concerned. They are a great team, and they've caught us, and odds would probably favor them to win the division. But it's just in terms of how the Mariners are playing. Like, yeah, Houston got hot. We all kind of thought they'd play better at some point here. But it's just, it's the Mariners. It's how they're handling it. And Steven, you made a great point too. Like, look how long it took to give Victor Robles every day at bats. I get it. I get he was a waiver claim. Do I expect him to keep this up? Probably not. He was a top prospect at one point. Maybe he has found something and he's just arrived. But it should not have taken this long. Like you said, you got the hot hand. You need to go up there and go, listen, Victor Robles is hot. He's getting at bats. And if he cools off, we'll take him back out. Now they've finally done that, which is awesome. I'm happy about that. But that should have happened probably a week and a half ago, to be honest.
At least. It's not like we're raking. It's not like we're killing it. And it's like, wow, we got How are we going to find that bats for Victor Robles? I don't know, man. All right, we have the lowest batting average in baseball. Like, pick anyone, spin a wheel, put them in there. Like, everyone's underperforming. Like, this should be. I'm willing to try anything. Like, anything should be a fair game right now.
Yeah, when he hit that ball into the upper deck, I think that was maybe a couple Sundays ago. It should have been like, all right, you got it. Like you're starting in left field until you prove that you're not that guy. I mean, when you hit a ball into the upper deck at T-Mobile, and the team has a whatever batting average they have and the lowest on base percentage and the most strikeouts, you get a leash. That's the rule. Them's the rules, guys. I'm not just being real. You hit a ball in the upper deck on the worst offensive team in baseball, you get a little bit of a leash. Call me crazy.
Yeah.
No, 100%. And it's like, I think you guys just both said, it's not like you got an outfield that's just raking out there and there's nowhere to play him. So, and listen, do I think that at the end of the year, I'm going to look back if the Mariners miss the playoffs and go, oh man, Victor Robles didn't get 11 at-bats at some point? Probably not. There's more bigger issues that are going on right now with the team, just the offense in general not hitting. But, when you're in a tight race, little things make a difference. So, there is one game here or there. I think they'll hang in there. I don't know who's going to win the division. I think the Mariners might hang in there. They've got the pitching to do it. So one game here or there can be the difference. And Victor Robles, one of your three best outfielders for sure. Like you said, he might be the best position player on this team right now, to be truthfully honest. You got to play him. I mean, he's making things happen on the base pass. He's a good defensive player and he's hitting. Truthfully, if he keeps this up, he's a borderline MVP candidate, to be perfectly honest with what he's giving you. So, no, little things like that I think are important. Sean, you hit on, I thought Brian Wu looked outstanding today. And a tough start for a young guy. This is kind of, I don't know if you ever put him, I hate saying must win unless it's truly like game 3 against the Astros, where literally your season is over if you lose.
Yep.
But that kind of a must win game day. You're 2 out if you lose. You are tied with the Astros if you lose today in the season series. And momentum just would have been shot. The vibes would have been gone. They're still a little iffy. I'm not saying the vibes are 100% back, but I think a pretty impressive start for Brian Wu today. Steven, what did you think of Wu?
Yeah, I thought it was the type of start he made a professional start. Like, he stopped the bleeding, which is hard to do. Like, it's one thing, you can picture momentum, right? If there's no momentum at all, it's pretty easy to move forward. But when actually you have a lot of momentum going against you, it's pretty hard to hold your ground. And so I thought it was a real gutsy performance. But like this whole season, it's not like our pitching is letting us down. It's not like Castillo pitched a stinker. It's not like Kirby was up there, throwing, turds at the strike zone. There's a reality here of just finally the bats woke up. Like, finally they did something around him. I would say all 3 starting pitchers pitched, obviously quality starts, and pitched well enough to win games. And so it was just finally, like, they got some run support. And so to me, it was more about the offense finally doing their part. Then Wu pitching is head and shoulders above what we've already seen in the series even. And that's not a diss on Wu. It's just our starting pitching's been that good that even really good starts feel like kind of a dime a dozen, which is a great problem to have, which all the more is a reason. Go get some bats, darn it, and go support them. Like, my goodness.
100%.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Like, I've talked about in my last 2 post-game shows. Kirby and Castillo are both good enough to win games. Beyond, not even like that's maybe even an understatement. They should have probably, with how they pitched, one game or won the games, I should say. One thing with the offense does break out a little bit today for the Mariners. The Mariners collect 9 hits. They score 6 runs, 2 walks, only 6 strikeouts. Sean, I want to get your take on one player in particular.
Yeah.
Jorge Palanco is starting to swing the bat a little bit. He's starting to look like the player the Mariners acquired in the offseason. Had a pretty nice road trip. I made that video. I don't know if you guys watched it after that Blue Jays game. And I said, get rid of Palanco, get rid of Ty France. I was done. Of course, Jorge Palanco decides to have his best run of the season, which, listen, great. That's good for the Mariners. Any one of these guys getting hot and going on a hot streak is a good thing for this team. So I'm not frustrated about it at all. I'll eat crow on that if Palanco wants to have a 120 WRC plus the rest of the year. But Sean, what's your thoughts on it? Because I look at this lineup and Julio's starting to get hot, kind of expected it. Cal hasn't been quite where we want Cal to be, but he's close. The other guys have kind of done what you need him to do. Palanco seems like the one guy that is really starting to take a step forward. What's your take on Jorge Palanco?
Yeah. I was with you. I thought that Palanco Should have been DFA'd, if I'm being completely honest. It got so bad. It got so dark for Palanco that I was just like, get anybody else in there. Get Dylan Moore, get Bliss, whoever. At least maybe they can make contact. And he was striking out at a rate that was just off the charts. As far as, moving forward, I don't know. My thoughts on Polanco has a lot more to do with the position he plays versus how he's playing right now. A couple games, a couple games going into the break and now having a decent series, that doesn't move the needle for me. The reason that you could talk me into saying, all right, let Polanco, let it ride, has a lot more to do with the position he plays. I mean, are you realistically going to be able to get a second baseman that's better, or at least better enough? I don't know. If he was playing first base right now, like we saw with Ty France, it's so much easier to upgrade first base. I mean, you have options, one, and two, there are first basemen available, at a reasonable cost at the deadline, or at least there always are historically. It's going to be really difficult to basically upgrade center field. Not that we need to. I'm just saying, for example, it'd be really difficult to get a center fielder, a shortstop, a second baseman, and a catcher. Just kind of those middle, positions. They're just a premium positions. They're going to cost you a lot. Is it realistic for us to go out and get a Paredes? I would love that. I think that we have the prospects to do that, and bolster the middle of our infield. I think it's possible. Do I think it's possible to get, a Nico Horner or a Jazz Chisholm? Yes, but that's going to cost you. And if you get those guys, you may not be able to go after some of those bigger impact bats. I would get aggressive. If it was me, I would go out and get aggressive.
Yeah.
This kind of takes me into a tangent. Are you okay if I rabbit trail a little bit here? Okay.
Go for it. Go for
Are
it.
you going to do the illustration we were talking about?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing.
Please do.
Well, there was a statement that Jerry made that really bothered me.
Go. Yes.
And basically he made the statement that, oh, well, there just might not be anything available. He said that on the Brock and Salk show. And I'm paraphrasing, but that was essentially the language he used. And it's like, man, you don't have the luxury of saying, well, there's just not things available. It's like, yeah, there are Jazz Chisholm. There is, reported, confirmed that Luis Robert is available. And this would be the equivalent of, me going on a road trip and, taking my kids to Disneyland. And there's a little spot on I-5. It's right after you get through Bakersfield, where there's one gas station for about a 20-mile radius. And that gas station price is jacked through the roof because they can. It's the only gas station they have. And if we're driving there and I tell my wife, after passing gas station after gas station on I-5, and I tell my wife, well, we're about to run out of gas, she's not going to be cool with me just saying, well, the gas price here is expensive. It's like, you got to pay it. Your family is stranded here, Jerry. Like, you have to pay whatever it takes to get a Luis Robert, whatever it pays to get a Jazz Chisholm. You don't have the luxury of saying, well, there's not a deal for gas. You know what I mean? Like, you have to pay whatever price it takes to get those guys. Your family is stranded on I-5. So do what it takes. And I don't want to hear excuses about it. If I'm being honest, I don't want to hear excuses about why you can't get it done. You've been the GM for now 9 years. It's, you built this thing. You got yourself into this mess. You need to get yourself out of it. So I know that was a roundabout way of getting there, but, to tie it all into a bow, I'm okay with Polanco playing second base as long as we are addressing other needs and making impact moves. And I'm okay letting Polanco ride as long as there's other things around him.
Yeah, there's a world of a difference between saying hey, we're going to give Palanco a leash and we're going to see if he can turn around, and Julio and Cal, versus the entire lineup. Like, there's just some guys you have to say, like, no, they don't have a leash anymore. I don't trust that they can get this done. And we are going, like, we can survive 3 guys figuring it out. You can't survive the whole lineup figuring it out. And yeah, it's going to cost you something. But exactly what we said, Sean, we're not at, like, the question is not, can you find a deal for gas? It's, we're out of gas and you must get some gas. And where we're at now, Jerry's like hunting for deals, like bargain hunting. And it's like, no, this thing's on fire and we need to put it out. Like, that's where it feels right now is it's not time for bargain shopping. It's time to get this done. It's been time to get it done for 3 years, and it's time. It's just stinking time.
Yep.
Yeah, one thing I will say, and listen, I'm with you guys. I would love to see them go out and make an impact move. I will say with like, I think you can do some bargain in terms of like to fill out the roster. I think like Victor Robles, kind of a perfect example, picked up waivers. He's been a nice addition. So I think it's about supplementing it, a little bit. Like, okay, you can go get a Luis Robert if you can pull that off. And then it's like, okay, now, there's your new right fielder. So now, now you can go maybe get another reliever. I don't know, whatever you need to do to fill it underneath. But, it can't be like, okay, we got Mark Canha and that's all we're doing. That might be, and listen, I'm not and listen, that might be, I'm fine. If they want to get Canha and make that the upgrade over Haniger, that might help the team. I think that probably does make them better, possibly. But what you guys are talking about is like, what is better? Okay, fine. You're an 86 win team now, and maybe you sneak in, but are you going to do any damage with that? We want this team to go from, contender to, or division, maybe here to here, to take that next big step essentially. And to do that, you got to pull the trigger on moves, and we'll see what they end up doing. I sometimes try not to read too much into what these guys say in these interviews. I'm with you guys. It struck me too. Sometimes I sit there, go, okay, like I'll wait and see what now, if he does nothing, if they don't do anything at the deadline, then I'll go back and rip those words. You know what I mean? Be like, that was kind of me during the Angels series. That first loss didn't bother me, but I was like, but if they lose the next two, I'm going to go back and rip the Friday loss. So kind of the same mentality. Like if he does something, like, okay, he's just talking, but if they don't do anything, it's just, and it sends that message to the clubhouse too, that, we really don't believe in you essentially. Mariners do make one move today. Essentially at the end of the day, they do place Ty France on irrevocable waivers. Who wants to take that and explain to the people, if you don't mind, what irrevocable waivers is? Sean, you want to take the mic on this?
I will give it my best shot. You are going to help me with it though, because it is a doozy.
I'll try.
Okay, we'll do this together. How about that?
Okay, I love it.
Okay, so Ty France got put on irrevocable waivers. So what that means is basically he's going to go through waivers. If you play fantasy football, you know what waivers are. Basically, the worst team gets to pick. And they can take Ty France, and it's going to go all the way down until you get to the best team. If Ty France does not get claimed, that would leave Ty France with the option of accepting his assignment to Tacoma. If he does that, he would get the remaining salary that he's owed, which is about $2.5 million. If he says, no, I don't want to go to the minor leagues, then he runs the risk of not getting picked up. So basically, if he elects free agency, what that translates to is if he gets picked up by anybody and just signs a minor league deal, a major league deal at the minimum, then the Mariners would then owe the rest of Ty France's salary. So it'd be prorated and the Mariners would pick it up. What I think he's going to do is probably decline going to the minor leagues. I think he's going to elect free agency, because I think somebody is going to take him at the league minimum. That would be, prorated about $280,000. I think a team is going to take a chance on that. And what that is going to result in is the Mariners basically picking up about about $2.25 million on the remainder of France's salary. Do you think I explained that well?
I know I think that's as good as I can explain it. It's one of those things I had to look up a bunch of things, and we'll get into a couple more things. And just to be clear, just so the people watch this, I think, and Sean, if I'm misspeaking for what you were saying, just correct me. You're not saying he's going to be claimed on waivers. He'll pass through waivers, because I don't think anybody's going to pick up that salary. You're talking once he clears waivers, elects for free agency, someone will then pick him up on a league minimum major league deal and probably throw him, as their 26th man on the roster. I think that's what you meant with that, right? Am I reading 100%. That properly?
I do not think that I don't think Ty France is going to get claimed. If he is, it's probably going to be by a team that is like the Dodgers. They claim, $2.5 million to the Dodgers is nothing.
They'll find that in between their couch cushions.
So
or it stands like, well, $2.5 million. So there we go. Hold the phone.
I think it's important to acknowledge this may not be the last we see of Ty France. There is a chance that Ty France plays first base tomorrow, or Monday, whenever you're listening to this. So I think that's important to realize. He didn't get DFA'd. He's still on the Mariners. There's a chance that he accepts the minor league deal. He and his agent may sit there and go, hey, there's not 100% chance you get claimed. Do you really want to leave $2.5 million on the table? It's a lot of money. There's a chance that he goes to Tacoma, and God forbid Tyler Locklear gets hurt. He's the next man up, unfortunately, should he be? That's a different question, but there is a world where Ty France does play for the Mariners again. I'd be shocked if it happens, but it's not impossible.
This part also probably goes without saying for all three of us, but it's also a bummer. I like Ty France. At the end of the day, it's been a bummer to watch him really dissolve as a player. John, we were actually at the game where he separated his shoulder or jacked up his arm.
I think it was his elbow.
I remember we watched that game and thinking his career's over. It looked like a career-ending injury type situation. It was gnarly, and the fact he was only out for a few weeks, but his career's never been the same. I think Sean, I don't know if we were texting some stats about that, but just he's one of those guys that you don't think of as an injury. Your classic Derrick Rose in basketball or something like that, or even like a Mike Trout, where it's just the injuries, they never overcame them, and they forever were changed. Haniger would be a great example of that. I think you may argue Ty France actually, his career is really separated because there was we all as Mariners fans, is it Vlad or is it France was the best first baseman in the American League, which sounds insane today, but for a little while there, that was really the question, and ever since that injury, he's been a shell of himself, and that's a shame because he's a good dude. He's hard not to cheer for, but you could just tell the fire was out, man. The clock struck midnight, and man, you hate to see it, but it was clear. And you can say something hurts, and it's still the right decision.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I wish Ty France the best. Seems like a great guy, great teammate, great vibes guy, but it was just so hard to watch. The funny thing is, though, even this year, before the injury in Kansas City, he had a 114 WRC plus. That's not lights out for a first baseman, but if he was, my buddy Mariner Sir was saying on Twitter, if he still had that number, he'd still be in the lineup every day. So even this year, it shows some signs where okay, I'm starting to see it a little bit, and then it would just kind of this whole team, it'd be okay, we're getting there, then right back down. And I think best case scenario, you guys can fill on this, give your thoughts on as well. The best case scenario for the Mariners would just be someone claims him, obviously on waivers. Like you said, the Dodgers just say, screw it, $2.5 million's nothing for us. We'll take a shot on him. That's probably the best case scenario. But Sean, to your point, we won't know for a few days because it's going to take a few days for the waiver, order to figure itself out. So they could theoretically, not even theoretically, just literally play him tomorrow against Tyler Anderson, a lefty, where you may play Ty France. How does that? I don't even know how that works. So is he? Can they take him off the roster for tomorrow? Is he?
No, they don't have to. As far as my understanding, the Blue Jays did something similar with Kiermaier, and he played while he was going through waivers. So he was on revocable waivers, though. Ty France is on irrevocable waivers. Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, I'm an expert on that. Let me tell you.
I got no
idea.
Yeah, I've got nothing there.
I think, Sean, actually, I think that is an interesting point, though, with Kiermaier was on revocable waivers. So as far as I'm understanding, that means that if someone claims him, the Blue Jays can pull him back and go, never mind, we'll keep him. Or I think.
Yeah. Anybody if the Orioles claimed him, they're actually, let's not do that.
Yeah. Exactly. No, we're going to pull him back. The Mariners can't pull Ty France back. So if someone claims him tomorrow morning or during the game, they can't be no, he's gone. So I just don't know how it works for the roster spot. Is he off the roster then, or is he just sitting on the bed? That's got to be the most awkward situation if you're Ty. It seems like it would just be better to kind of, I don't know how it works, but just get him off the roster, let Locklear take the at-bats and go from there. Steven, I'll bring this next question to you. Obviously, it looks like, assuming this irrevocable waiver thing plays out, however it does, that Ty France probably be off the roster. Tyler Locklear will get the initial shot, I would assume, at first base for the team. I've kind of said that's I think the quickest, easiest move the team can make to get better. I don't know if it will make them better, but what's your thoughts on that?
I think the immediate Band-Aid is Locklear. And I'm mentally prepared for Ty France to go to either the Houston Astros and just stab a knife in our back, or to go to the Dodgers and do a Chris Taylor and just be who is this guy? Where has he been? I'm mentally prepared for both of those. But I think Tyler Locklear is the Band-Aid, and I want to see them, swing for the fences. No pun intended. Vlad is the biggest fish that you can get right now, and I'd like to see them do everything they can to acquire him. I'm not banking on that by any means, but I do think that's the most impact back that we can acquire. I think they should be exploring everything when it comes to first base. That's a position you can't be a net negative offensively. It can't be a slap hitter. I think that's one of the things that's been really frustrating with Ty France, is watching him turn into, looking like Tony Gwynn out there at times without the batting average. And it's just like, that's not going to work at that position. You need some pop, you need some power. And so I want to see them do something. But I think Locklear, man, he is one of our, he's our only first base, prospect anywhere sniffing, Seattle. And so I think deserves a shot. He didn't look lost when he came up, earlier in the year. And so I'd like to see him get some at bats and see what we got in the short term. But I don't think that Locklear is probably the answer when we're going down the home stretch. I don't know if that's who we're really going to want to be relying on. We're trying to chase Houston, trying to chase Baltimore, trying to chase New York, whatever this is looking like. I think we got to get something a little more stable, steady, that's a pillar in the lineup at first base.
Yeah, you could put Luke Raley at first base, but then you lose some value with him not playing defense in the outfield. So, I think that's more of like in a pinch Raley can play there. Sean, what's your thoughts here? Because, I kind of look at it like I think Locklear, kind of to Steven's point, kind of the Band-Aid right now. I think he's going to get a couple-week audition to kind of show if he can be the everyday first baseman. I'm a big Tyler Locklear fan. So when I said earlier, I don't know if it's going to be an improvement, just to anybody listening, I'm not saying that I'm down on Locklear, but baseball's hard. He has only had 20 at-bats in the big league. So there is a chance he kind of puts up Ty France number. So Sean, what's your take on Locklear France in this first base situation?
Yeah, I think that he kind of similar to Palanco. You got about a 10-game window here where you can really show, do you belong or not? You're not going to be able to put much stock into stats, but I think it's really going to be looking at it. You're going to have to rely on the eye test a little bit because a 10-game sample size is not much, but he's not going to be worse than Ty France because that's literally impossible. So
never underestimate the Mariners.
Yeah, well, I'm about to screenshot this, and it's be famous last words. It can't be worse. It can always.
I do agree.
It can always get worse with the Seattle Mariners.
I don't know. That's a lot of double plays that Ty France grounded into. That not all outs are created equal because sometimes you get 2 outs, and Ty France did that a lot.
Hey,
so
Locklear's glove was awesome in that just little window too. Actually, that was something that really popped to me when he first came up. Anyway, Sean.
As much as a first base glove can pop, sure. Yeah, I mean, Locklear, it's so tough. Sometimes rookies come in and they really give you a spark. I think about a guy like Evan Carter last year. Obviously, he's on the high end. He was a top pick, but you never know. Sometimes rookies come in and it takes a while for the league to adjust. And they really, think about Cade Marlowe last year. Sometimes guys come up and they really get a jolt going for the offense. You hope that you hope that Locklear can do that. Will he? I don't know. I mean, he's our best option right now. So there's nobody else that I would rather see getting those at bats. That's for sure. I think that, that idea of hitters, sometimes give the offense a jolt. Sometimes, you see guys get brought up in September and give a jolt too. So I wonder if Cole Young, give Palanco a little leash here, see if he can do it. And if he can't, maybe you just see if Cole Young, there's no film on him, maybe he can give you a little jolt down the stretch. That could be what they're thinking too for second base. But in the immediate, I think that Tyler Locklear, I'm excited. It's going to be fun. Hopefully he can do it. Hopefully he can be the guy. Hopefully we don't need to do anything at first base. Hopefully, he's just the answer and you can use resources for other spots.
That's, I talk about all the time on the show is the best resources the Mariners have. Listen, I want them to make moves. So for anybody listening, I'm not saying that, but the guys on the roster performing is the best thing this team can do. Jorge Palanco heating up and holding down second base, if he continues to stay hot and does that, is the best thing for the team. Like to Sean, your point earlier, that it allows them, one, to not have to make a trade for somebody, and two, at a very tough position to do it. First base is a little easier, I think, to acquire somebody, but you just need that little jolt. Me and Mariners talk about all the time. Like even Mike Ford last year came up, 120 WRC plus, gave him a nice little boost. Maybe
Yeah.
Locklear, like you said, the book's not really out on him yet. And maybe it will be. Maybe pitchers will figure him out. But right now, you've got 61 games to go. You don't need him to be a superstar. You need to be better than Ty France and just, one nice stretch of baseball. I think you're in decent shape, essentially.
Well, you said Jay is massive. You said this on our podcast, and we've been saying it ever since, is that if these guys just play to the back of their baseball card, we'll be fine. The best acquisition the Mariners can make is Julio being an MVP candidate. Like, that's the biggest acquisition. I don't expect Robert to come in and be an MVP candidate. I don't expect anybody that we'd acquire to be an MVP level player. Julio, I expect that. And if we can get that version of Julio, that's the biggest acquisition we can make. If Palanco can play to the back of his baseball card, that's better than anyone that we're talking about at second base. Like, that's the best second base acquisition we can get is Palanco just being Palanco. If Mitch Garver can just play to the back of his baseball card, that's one of the best, right-handed hitters you can acquire that could be on the market right now. And at some point we become jaded and cynical, and rightfully so, because it's been a 100-game sample size. This is not a bad 2 weeks, but we can't forget that the biggest acquisitions this team can make don't require a trade at all. It's actually those guys turning around. Now, I don't think we can bank on that. I do think we have to actually go make moves. But what you were referring to, Jay, earlier about somebody like a Mark Canha, I think that can be a move, but it can't be the move. We need the move with some supplemental pieces around. And man, this team gets real special real quick if a Julio, if a Palanco, you supplement with a Robert, you get a Mark Canha in here. This team looks radically different real quick, and that's where things get really exciting.
Yep.
I think that's really, and that kind of brings me into the last segment. And Sean, I'll start with you with it. But Steven, I think you made a couple great points there to, like I said, to lead us into the end here. Is we're not even asking these guys. I say all the time, it's a cliche. We're not asking to be Julio, maybe a little superstarish, but Mitch Garver, what's his career average OPS? I don't know what it is off the top of my head. Do that. Jorge Polanco doesn't have to have his best season ever. Just have your most generic season that you've had, essentially, like a 7. I know OPS isn't the end all be all. I've got the numbers up here right now, so I'm looking at it. Polanco's OPS is 595. If that was 722, which isn't great, that would probably be below his career average.
His career is 767.
Give me 735. Give me whatever Mitch Haniger's is. Give me those numbers. I know it's harder in T-Mobile than other places, but this would be drastically different. Like you said, we're at a 101 game sample. Clearly, like, I'm not expecting it to turn around, but even now, as bad as it has been for some of these guys through 101 games, if they can play the back of their baseball card for 61 games, this team, I think, does have a chance to win this division. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that as far as guys making a turn, we've seen Julio start that, and I want to acknowledge that. Like, he's been fantastic for the last basically, it's probably a couple weeks sample size at this point. The guy that I'm looking at the most is the most premium position on the field, and that's shortstop. All of this conversation needs to revolve around JP Crawford. He's been probably maybe the biggest disappointment out of everyone. He hasn't been the worst, but as far as like what you need out of your shortstop, out of your leadoff hitter, out of your guy that can consistently throughout the course of his career put the ball in play, he has not done that at all. And it's really hard to get a new leadoff hitter that plays shortstop. That's not going to be something that you can just get at the deadline. We talked about Palanco. You could get a Jazz Chisholm. You could do that. You're talking about DH. You could go out and get a DH tomorrow if you wanted one. That's a pretty easy position to fill. Your leadoff hitter that plays shortstop. If that guy's bad, that's going to be a really tough one to fix. And JP Crawford, he's got to get this thing going. He's not quite as important as Julio, but he's a premium position. He was. The team was built for him to be an on-base machine that puts the ball in play, and he just is not doing that. And dude, I think this conversation has to revolve around that, because he's the most difficult guy to replace other than Julio. So
totally. I mean, you're talking about two guys going in two opposite directions. Sean, that's such a good call out. Julio's got in the month of July 400. Going into today, a 400 batting average with a 1.2 OPS. Like, that's going to work. A 1200 OPS for the month of July. JP batting a $158 with a 525 OPS.
Yeah, disaster.
Not going to work.
Yeah, I think you need to move him off the leadoff. Julio got moved down to 7, 8, 9. Why aren't we doing that with JP? JP's been worse than Julio. So why is he just stubborn? Keep your nose to the grindstone. Don't look up with Julio in the leadoff spot. It makes no sense. I know we don't have any great options at leadoff, but it's not for the production side of the lineup. You're doing this for JP. You need to figure out a way to get him going, and he's been in the leadoff spot. There's never been a game where he's not been a leadoff hitter, I should say. Why? That doesn't make any sense. If you're going to do all that stuff for Julio, why aren't you doing all that stuff for JP? It doesn't make any sense to me.
And, to that point, JP Shaw is a great call out. And it's someone that I tend to forget to kind of when I throw guys under the bus during some of the videos. I don't know why. I kind of always forget because he's just kind of there. Like you said, he hasn't been the worst. And right now, I've been critical of JP, but not as much as I probably should have been. And to your point with the leadoff spot, the other thing is too, and maybe I'm wrong on this, Steven, looks like you've got some of the numbers up. He's not walking. And listen, a pitcher's story, you pitch strikes, you can't walk, but the walk rate seems to have gone way down too. He doesn't look as patient. He still works the count. I'm not saying he's going up there hacking, Unieski Betancourt style or anything like that to bring up a name from the past, but he's not,
Deep cut.
well now, there we go. Deep cut there for sure. But he's not working the walks like it just, in my opinion, maybe the numbers indicate different. I don't have it in front of me, but it's just kind of all been downhill. And Sean, to your point, like you said, I certainly understand, and that would be Scott's answer, I'm sure, right? Like, well, who do you want to bat leadoff? I get that, but throw Victor Robles. He's giving you your best at bats. Give him the most at bats, right?
Yeah.
Like simple. Give your best hitter the most at bats. Go Robles. Yeah.
Yeah. JP Crawford. All right. This is a little trivia. What do you think his average is in the 9th inning of this year?
Here we go.
So 9th inning, any count, any situation. What do you think JP Crawford's batting average is?
This season or career wise?
This season, 2024. 9th inning only.
I don't remember a lot of JP's been clutch. I don't remember a lot of 9th inning clutch. It's going to be something crazy. It's either amazingly good or amazingly bad. I'm going to say 113.
You're 113 too high. It's 0.
0? I almost said it just as like it's got to be something that crazy. I almost said it. I'm like, know he's had to have had a hit somewhere.
You could have got out there and done all those at bats, man. Hey, Stan, I can save you a lot of money. I can save you a lot of money, Stan. Put me in there for JP Crawford in the 9th inning. Yep. I can do the same thing, buddy.
In late,
one in there.
Yeah, in late and close. So this is honestly, this stat is where JP. It all comes down to this stat for me in late and close, because he's always been, clutch. You got to, JP's coming up. That was the whole thing last year. He's got a 487 OPS in late and close situations. So that whole narrative about clutch JP, you can flush that down the drain. That's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, for this year. And he's just got to get back to it. I think that's the thing, right? Like he's been that in his career, but just for some reason. And Jay, you said something that was so good on Twitter. You were talking about what's been so wild is we have all these outliers towards the negative right now. And there's like no outliers to balance it out. It's all just one direction negative. You would expect Cal batted 315 with 40 homers. And you know what? He's never going to do that again, but ride the wave, baby. Or, there's no positive outliers here. Like it's mind boggling.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And then real quick, Sean, to your point about the clutch, it matters. Like look at Cal Raleigh, not having a great year, but he's had some big moments. So at least as his numbers are down, he's come through in clutch situations, which is going to help elevate you to win. And yeah, Steve, I made that point on Twitter. For anybody that doesn't follow me on Twitter, I essentially said that it's just crazy that the Mariners are having everybody underperform, which listen, you're always going to have a few underperformances. Yeah. You're never going to have everybody in line. But there is not one overperformance outside of probably Victor Robles, who truthfully has had 45 at-bats. So it's not like he's, been in there since April every day and running an 801 OPS. Even the guys that have been okay, like Dylan Moore's been fine, right? 721 OPS, utility guy, but that's about what you'd expect. He hasn't been overperforming. And even the pitching, I don't think is overperformed. Maybe maybe Logan a little bit, but not anything crazy. There has not been one guy like Steve, like you said, where even though it's okay, is Cal gonna hit 50 home runs every year? No, but that one season where these guys just all go off, can someone have an overperformance once on this team?
Yeah. It was JP last year. That's what it was.
Yeah. No,
totally.
Yeah. You had JP
Totally.
last year, Carlos Santana 2 years ago. I think you'd maybe consider an overperformance.
Yeah.
Which I feel like there's been some others too that I'm missing. Maybe go ahead, Steven. Go ahead.
I was going to say
Suarez.
Oh yeah. Suarez. He had a year there. Before we totally jump off of JP Crawford here, what's the job of a leadoff hitter? Like at the end of the day, Sean, we were talking about this on one of our episodes. Like the most important thing for a leadoff hitter is get on base, right? Like that's your number one job as a leadoff hitter, get on base. And JP Crawford has a 296 on base percentage. Like that cannot be what you're trotting out there in the one spot. He needs to go to the bottom of the line just to get right. He needs to get right. And you're talking about Victor Robles being the guy. Well, the dude's got a 468 on base percentage right now. Ride that sucker.
Ride the wave.
Ride. And I don't know if that includes today or going into today. The dude, I'm just saying, what are we doing? Like at some point, like maybe a critique of Scott is going to be, and I'm not saying I can manage better than Scott. Like Scott's forgotten more baseball than I'll ever know. So like, don't hear me being cocky here. There's just a sense of like, are we looking at the numbers? Like at some point, like, come on, man, let's not be stubborn here. And just, what are we doing? Yep. What are we doing? A 298 on base percentage? Like that's not going to cut it.
And I really think with, and Robles was 2 for 4 days. So if it doesn't include today, it would have gone up because he's on base half his at bats today. So, one thing with Scott and company is, and then we'll probably wrap it up here. I'll give you, let you guys
keep it going. Keep it going.
No. Keep it, ride the way.
Beginning of a 3-hour episode.
Listen, if I didn't have to be at work tomorrow at 4, I would say, we'll do it. I'll have you guys back on, and we'll do, especially maybe as we get to the trade deadline. I think I'm going to do a trade deadline show with Mariners. So I'm going to hopefully try to take the day off. So if you guys want to come in for that, I'll have people in and out throughout the day, and we'll talk about Mariners throughout the day. But nice. I lost my train. Who are we talking about here?
JP Crawford.
JP Crawford. Oh, Scott with that. They are so big, and I'm an analytics guy, and they're big into it. That the lefty righty matchups and everything. And listen, I think sometimes it pays off. I think sometimes their patience. I always use the example like Matt Brash last year started out very sluggish. His ERA was high, he was getting hit. But if you looked at his Savant page and the underlying numbers, he was getting BABIP to death. He was fine. Kudos to them for sticking with it, going, we trust the underlying data, and he bounced back. But sometimes you just, who do I think is a better hitter, JP Crawford or Victor Robles? I'd probably take JP Crawford, gun to my head with that. But right now, Robles is better. I'm going to use this from now on. Ride the wave. That's going to be one of my new slogans now. If you didn't trademark it, just say, you know what? And like you said, I couldn't manage it better. These guys wouldn't have any respect for me in the clubhouse whatsoever. But sometimes you just look at things, in sports, football. I know you guys are football guys. Sometimes you go, this running back's getting me yards. I don't care if the other guy is a more talented back. That's how we end up with Russell Wilson starting over Matt Flynn. It wasn't the data tells us Flynn is better. No, they went with Russell Wilson, made the right call. They rode the wave. Sometimes you just got to do it.
Yep.
All right. Last thing we'll get into here as we drop the mic on everybody. Yeah. Closing thoughts. I did it with Mariner Sir last week. I'll do it with you guys. I'm going to put you on the spot. Where do you think the Mariners end up this season? It can be not making it. Well, it can be whatever, however you want to answer it. Steven, we'll start with you.
If you listen to our second podcast, which all 6 of you maybe know, we were first getting going here, we did a prediction show. And I'm going to stick with my initial predictions that I had for the Mariners season, which was I predicted them to finish like a game behind the Astros. We miss the division title, but we make the playoffs. I think we'll sneak into a wild card. I don't know how the seeding's all going to work. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But I think we finally do slay the dragon. I think we finally do conquer, the final boss level, if you will, when it comes to the AOS. And I think we will beat them in a playoff series. I think that is going to, and I think that will expend all of our energy and that's going to be our World Series. And we're going to get absolutely wiped clean by the Baltimore Orioles. But I right now, if you said, what do I think the Mariners are going to do? I'm going to stick with my initial pick, which is that we're going to miss the division. We're gonna have a big old chip on our shoulder, just sneak into the playoffs there in one of those wild card spots. But we will beat the Astros, and that finally will be the monkey off the back. That's what I think is gonna happen at the end of the day.
Love it.
Yeah.
Sean.
Well, I think that, not to sound like Scott Service here, because he takes it way too far, but every team is going to have high highs and low lows. That just is a thing. And the Astros are on they are on a heater right now. That's just the name that they just are. And the Mariners are on a free fall. Do I think that is likely to continue? No, I think that what's more likely is that the Mariners go on some form of a heater and the Astros come down to earth. I think that I don't want that to be an excuse from Scott, but that is the reality of baseball. You play 162. So what I think is most likely is that the Mariners are going to go up, the Astros are going to go down, and I think that the Mariners will end up winning the West. I also think that a factor in this is the Astros don't have anything to trade. Their farm system is pretty much bad. There's no other without using colorful descriptors. They're not very good. Their farm system. They don't have anything to trade. The Mariners can virtually get whatever they want. So I think it's much more likely that the Mariners improve their roster. The Astros really can't. I think that the trajectory of the Mariners are going to go up. The Astros is going to go down. And I think we do end up winning the West. As far as my excitement of that, can we do any damage in the playoffs? That's all going to determine on our deadline moves. If we make some big swings, it's going to get interesting. If we don't, well, just be happy to be there, and we're going to get bounced probably in the wild card round. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think those are great calls. Like you said, it's hard to predict when you get to the playoffs. Baseball's weird. Yeah. The Diamondbacks make the World Series last year. Yep. Everybody listening to this has heard my prediction. And I think and I love both the optimism from both the guys. I'm there too. It's funny, we can bash this team and they were like, well, I think they're going to get in. And I'm kind of in the same boat. I'll rip the team apart. But, at the beginning of the season, my prediction was they win the AL West. Am I confident in that? No, I do think Houston's probably a little bit better, but Sean, I thought you made a great point that Mariners probably have a better ability to get better here in the next couple of weeks than Houston does. Mm-hmm. But the Mariners haven't done enough for me to change my preseason prediction. Like, I can't say they're going to win the West. They're tied the West with 60 games to go and really change my prediction. I think, Steven, I think kind of you were in that boat with your prediction. Can't really change it. They're right there where they need to be. So not confident in it, but I'll say they win this division. It's about time we got to watch a division win. I was a freshman in high school last time they did. I don't know where you guys were at, but it's been a while.
If they don't win this year, when are you going to win the West? Like, if not now, when? And I tell you what, if they don't make the playoffs, I'll be out. Like, I'll be out on this whole experiment with Scott and Jerry. Like, you have to make the playoffs. If not this year, what are we doing? So that's kind of how I feel, to put a bow on it.
I've been a pretty big defender of Jerry, Scott, Justin on my channel. I think overall they've done a lot of good here, and this organization's in a good spot with some good core talent. But I'm with you. If they don't get in, you have to eventually, and I don't trust John Stanton coming to hire anybody better necessarily, right? But you kind of have to look at it and go, it's just they're not getting this team over the hump. Now, I think ownership is not helping with that, but you still have to do it regardless. We all have jobs. We might have bosses that are cheaper. My boss watches this. I'm not claiming you're cheap, but we all have to deal with constraints. If we don't get it done, you lose your job, and it's unfortunate, but I'm kind of with you. If they don't get in, I think you need to see some changes. I want to see the season play out before I make my claims. Essentially, I think you guys probably in that same boat a little bit. Yeah. Let's see how this plays out. But I'm getting to that point where, especially even I don't think it'd be all Scott's fault if they don't get in the playoffs, but you can't roll it back. You'd have to say we got to get at least a different voice in here at that point if they don't get in the playoffs. So, Steven, any closing thoughts from either of you guys?
Yeah, that last point you're saying there, Jay, that you can have good process and bad results, and you can live with that. Like, this offseason, I think overall was good process, bad results.
Same.
And you know what? If you go make some swings and you go actually try to make a run at this thing, and you go get Robert, or you go get a Paredes, or you go, somehow get Vlad, or you do whatever. I know they've said Vlad's off the market, but you get my point. You go make some you go try to rebuild this roster, and it falls on its face. I'm not going to have a whole lot of critique for them, because at least you did good process, and if it's bad results, you can live with that. If Palanco never turns it around and Julio never turns it around, that's, what? Hey, good process, bad result. But if they just sit on their hands, or they do what they did last year and you're trading away pieces, then the whole thing, to me, this thing is cratered at that point. So I can live with good process, bad results. I can't live with bad process and expected results. That's the thing to me, that just don't sit on your hands. Go. This fan base deserves it. This pitching staff deserves it. Go make this thing happen.
I'll actually even be a little harsher, which is going to sound crazy to some people, as much as I've defended this front office, even with the good process. And I agree with you 100% on that. So I'm not disagreeing with it. I thought Palanco was good process. I thought this offseason in general was pretty good. Same thing at the deadline. But I'm at the point now, the results have got to be there. And if it fails, let's say they do go get Luis Robert and he stinks. They go get Vlad. I know they're not going to get both, but let's just say they do and they both stink. I got to look and go, whatever they're doing just is not working. I can like it. And I would look at people and go, well, Jay, you thought it was the right move. Well, yeah, I'm a dumb too. So don't listen to me. I don't know. I'm not the GM. So I'm not paid to make those decisions. I think Palanco was a great process, but so far it's not working. And eventually you just got to say, guys, the results aren't there. So I mean, I'm with you 100% on what you're talking about.
If you own a restaurant and you're getting quality ingredients and the food keeps coming out burnt, at some point you got to look at the cooks and say somebody isn't cooking this thing right. Like it doesn't matter how good the chicken is. If you can't cook it, you're going to start poisoning people. And like that, like at some point, that's what you're looking at if you're a Mariners fan.
Exactly. Sean, any closing thoughts from you?
No, I thought Steven hit the nail on the head. Hopefully the Mariners can take 2 out of 3 from the Angels. We got a pretty easy schedule coming up. We are facing, I think, all of the White Sox and Angels top pitchers, which is a bummer. I think we're facing Fetty and Crochet when we face the White Sox. We're facing Tyler Anderson, and it's like, oh man. So it's not going to be a cakewalk. I've said many times that when Crochet or Fetty are pitching for the White Sox, they are not a bad team. So it's not a team that you can just overlook. We're going to have to show up ready to play, and you cannot lose these series. Period. End of story. We have to walk out of the Angels, White Sox, winning both of those. So hopefully we can get that done. Yeah,
and it's like you said with Crochet and Fetty, it's Felix Hernandez on the Mariners, right? Like those teams weren't good, but when Felix was on the mound, they were capable. And the Angels will throw Soriano at you as well, who is a pretty solid pitcher. Doesn't mean those guys aren't beatable by any means, but it's not going to be a cakewalk just because it's Angels and the White Sox. Well, I want to thank both of you for coming on. I had a great time talking ball. We went over an hour. I told these guys 30 minutes before, but we went a little over. Nothing wrong with that. We're just talking ball. Again, everybody, links will be in the description, but check out Collins It Like It Is podcast. Steven, Sean, and Larry, both great, all 3 great guys talking ball, and just fun to be able to listen to another Mariners podcast. And you guys are great guys, and I really enjoy listening to you guys. You've been part of my regular Mariners podcast schedule. So really appreciate you guys coming on here and joining me today.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, man. This was a blast. Would be more than happy to do it again. This was great.
Oh yeah. When you said 30 minutes, I was like, there's no way. There's no way. We're doing 30.
I know.
What are you talking about? We're going an hour. What are we doing the intro in 30 minutes? No, thanks for having us on, man. This is a blast.
Absolutely.
I was talking on the last podcast with Ty that I knew talking to my brother and my dad would be a blast. We've been doing this since we were kids, What I didn't know is there's this awesome community that we'd be able to connect with, and you're a key part of that, man. And so thanks for having us on. A lot of fun. It's been fun to just make some new community, new friends, kind of just getting to talk ball. I mean, the thing is, there's not a lot of people that you can talk about JP Crawford's OPS with, and actually not be like a psychopath. And so it's just fun to be able to actually dive in with some people that like actually care at that level. Because we're fans, at the end of the day, like none of us are insiders on anything, but like we're fans and we care about this team, and we got shared memories, and we deeply, this team has like shaped, my childhood and my life, and I'm building memories with my kids, watching this team, and it matters. And so it's fun to build a community that just cares at that level. So man, it's fun to talk to you about it. It's been a really good time. Thanks again for having us on, man.
Absolutely. Anytime you guys are welcome on. Like I said, trying to just build this community. It really is a truly, truly great community of people that are trying to lift others up, which is great to see. Nobody is, I talk about Ty all the time, could easily sit there locked on and go, why would I help? They're going to take views away from me. Possibly. I'm not going to help other people. But that's not how it is with this community. So it's been great. And I'm with you, growing up with this team. I've got 3 kids as well. Poor kids are becoming Mariners fans, so they're going to understand the pain that we've been through. It's time to pass it on.
It builds character.
Exactly. It builds a little toughness in them. No, appreciate you guys coming on as always. We will do it again. Thank you again to everybody for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out Steven, Sean, and Larry on the Collins It Like It Is podcast. I will see everybody tomorrow as the Mariners begin a 3-game set with the Angels. Take care, everybody, and go Mariners. Big W today. Feeling better. Peace.